Hi everyone. So I'm Hannah from the Heart Centre Visionaries YouTube channel from Hannah Marie Coaching, and I'm here today for another lovely conversation. So these conversations are with highly sensitive women in business, and I'm really passionate about this topic because I think sensitivity is something that's been seen as kind of a weakness in our world. And I'm really passionate about getting this message out there that actually there are superpowers to our sensitivity. So I've been having wonderful conversations with other women that are sharing their knowledge on this topic. So today I've got the beautiful Vicki Tongeman. How are you doing, Vicki? So great to have you.
Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your series of talks with lovely, beautiful women.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, I thought you definitely have a lot of wisdom on this topic to share. So just as a little quick intro. So Vicki does magic mermaid coaching. So she fuses like NLP techniques and life coaching techniques to help people like break through all sorts of things, right? But you're passionate about helping women and mums, a lot of mums. So do you want to elaborate on that? What got you into that work?
Yeah, so I got to a point where something was pulling me away from the day-to-day life that I was living at the time, which was kind of work, being a mum, school runs, all those sorts of things, family life. But there was something that was niggling at me, and I didn't know what it was. I just felt like I had to break out a little bit and do something, extra or different. And I didn't see myself as sensitive at all at the time, but I just had to follow, I had no choice but to change in some way. I'd read a book called The Positive Woman, and so I then went on to work with people who were vulnerable, originally financially, and then moved on to coaching them both financially and in being able to have hope and some sort of aim for a better life from where they were. And because I was kind of working with these people, I was like motivated to learn more and more. And eventually I thought I again followed my intuition without realizing it. I bumped into an NLP trainer, didn't even know what he was or who he was. I remember saying to someone, I've no idea why I'm meeting this guy, but I'm going with it. And I think that was the first time that I realized that I would be helping people with their intuition in some way, because there's something called a timeline where you can kind of walk 5 years ahead into your future. And I found myself saying, I'm helping people get in touch with their higher self. And I didn't even know what higher self was.
Wow. How beautiful was that though, that you were guided to that as well?
Yeah. So I think, that was, for me, the motivation has always been, if I can learn more, I can help others more. If I gain more skills, I can support others and help them to grow more and share more and raise people's vibrations, raise the earth's vibrations, etc. So
I
that's
love
always
that.
been my thing. Yeah.
And it's so beautiful that you were led, like you said, you felt there was something niggling and that you needed to follow that, and it led you to this teacher. I always think the teacher appears when we're ready, and that you're able to help other women, because I know I love it. I love your work. As you know, we know each other very well, and Vicki has this beautiful, like this soothing energy. You always relax people, and yeah, I love the way that you always care about the collective, about helping humanity. From you doing the inner work, you put that energy out and it ripples to help other people, which is what we can do as sensitive women as well. So
Yeah, and you mentioned about the weaving. I think where the weaving comes in is at the same time as I was training in neuro-linguistic programming, I'd also begun to attend a meditation group, a spiritual development group, which again I knew nothing about. But the two they really seem to parallel one another. So my coaching became more of a spiritual coaching, I suppose. I would bring in bits of the meditation group and the knowledge I was picking up from there, and also be able to read in some ways people's images and visualizations they were having with an extra element to them. So yeah,
yeah,
and that's what you were saying about the weaving bit, weaving it all together, and why it's a magic mermaid.
Yes, oh yeah, of course, yeah, because that magic mermaid, yeah, I love that weaving. And as you say, you trusted that intuition, right? That piece. And I think we'll get on to it a bit more in detail, but I think from these conversations I've had, that it's like a really important part of, actually, if we are highly sensitive and empathetic, we're often quite intuitive, but we don't realize it's intuition. We just think, oh, coincidence or something. I know I used to. So like, I do ask people this, and when, like, there are probably a series of moments for you, but when did you first find out, or find out that you were highly sensitive?
Oh, not that long ago. I think, as you say, it's sort of like gradual realizations. But I do know in 2012, when I went to this meditation / spiritual development group, everyone was like, oh yeah, I'm seeing this and I'm hearing this, and they're downloading, stuff that actually came true, just a couple of years ago, and all sorts of stuff. And I was like this robot, this logical being, as far as I could see, going, well, how can you prove this, and what does that mean, and all this sort of thing. And so I didn't see myself as sensitive at all. And I think possibly because I was surrounded by either people who are into money or people who are into computers, and I had an interest in computers. That was my focus, was like logic and reasoning and things like that. But then I began to, how you look up to people and you think, I'd really like to be like that.
Yeah.
And I started reading things like Natural Health magazine, which eventually led to, I think it was Psychology magazine, and then Natural Health magazine, which sort of was giving a few snippets about other ways of being. And there was an article in there by, I think it was Lenny Kravitz's daughter, and she mentioned that in order to get in touch with her angels, or her guardian angel, she would imagine that the guardian angel was behind her and step backwards and imagine the wings coming around her.
Wow.
I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. So I started doing that. And I think that was probably one of my first practices, to try and imagine the idea that actually there might be other things out there, other beings. We talked about crystals and things in the group, and so I actually had some crystals drop behind my back from nowhere when I was at this spiritual group. Things were beginning to kind of prove themselves to me. But again, I think probably it wasn't until a friend of mine was advising me on why I maybe struggled with being in public, or being in a group of people. She said, well, the thing is, you're very sensitive and you're picking up people's emotions. And I was like, me? I'm not sensitive. No way.
That's so interesting, isn't it? That these things awaken us to that sensitivity. And it was, do you think that's partly because we've spoken about this in these conversations, is that a lot of us have shut down that part of us, and we don't realize it's there because it wasn't safe, right?
Yes.
Seen in that sensitivity. Do you think it was something to do with that you didn't really acknowledge that you were sensitive?
I think so. I mean, I think what my friend said was that that because of the intensity of the emotions of the people around me when I was young, I would have automatically shut down that sensitivity, probably way before I would have even consciously been aware of it, because it was my my birth story, etc., was slightly turbulent. But yeah, I had members of family who all loved us, but they had very high emotions, and I suspect that unconsciously I probably just couldn't cope with all of those emotions, and and somehow shielded myself from that. So I just wasn't aware of it. And of course, I didn't mix with anyone. I heard stories. In fact, I think my dad did have some visions, but it was just like, oh, well, that was his thing. It wasn't anything that anyone else would have. Whereas, some people kind of grow up with parents who were very intuitive and have always got the joss sticks out, and kind of learn all of that at an early age, and would recognize those skills that they have. Whereas if you're not really living around that, you don't really understand it.
You don't
But
realize
yes,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
That's interesting. And it's almost like it is a part of us, because I've talked about this as well. Being highly sensitive is a trait that we're just born with. But again, like you said, if we're not around people that have that trait, we think almost everyone else is like that, right? We probably think everyone else is sensitive to things, but actually they're not. So I'd love to hear a bit more about, because I know about it a bit more from what you've told me about being so your friend said you were sensitive to people's emotions. So how was that manifesting for you when you were sort of out in social situations?
So for me, that was the reason that I and she became aware of it, was because I was at her workshop. It was a mandala workshop, and I was sneezing away, and I was so worried. We were all sat round a big table in a big community hall. There'd been a problem with parking. We'd all thought we could park outside the hall, but actually we weren't allowed to, and we all had to move our cars. So I'd perhaps picked up people's anxiety around that. And eventually I was worried that people would think they were going to catch something from me. So there were plenty of other tables in the hall. So I thought, no, I'm just going to go move over there, so nobody, again, thinking of other people. And my friend came over. She didn't know me very well at the time. That's the second time I'd met her. And she just stood behind me and did some Reiki on me. Again, wasn't really aware of what that was too much. And for about maybe 15 minutes. And then I got up at some point to get a cup of tea. And as I moved around, I realized, oh, I'm not sneezing anymore.
Wow.
So I think that was what convinced me that it must be something energetic, because I had just been thinking that I was allergic to some food, or it was just stress or something like that. And I had sort of noticed a pattern of, if I went to an event, I would often be quite ill the next day with sort of hay fever symptoms. And again, just put it down to being my fault rather than anything else. So yeah, that was the main thing.
That's so interesting. It's actually like, that physical, you were sneezing as like people's emotions. And I think, it's such a journey of being highly sensitive. I mean, I'm still learning so much about it. But, the moment, I think one of the moments I realized that I was picking up people's energy as well is, if anyone's been, probably most people have been on the tube in London, right? So I was feeling so energetic before, and then you go down into the tube, come out, feel absolutely drained. And every time I was thinking, why? It kept happening for years. I had no idea what was happening, but I was just taking on this heaviness of the energy around me. And I think actually it was one of my mentors. She came to London, and she'd been living in Paris, and we had a day together, and she was like, oh yeah, the underground's intense for sensitive people, because you just kind of like a sponge to it and just absorb everyone's energy and emotions. So after that I started my energy protection, and it was much better. But
good.
It's fascinating, right, that we can go in these situations, we have no idea what is happening to us. So for people out there, like I think we've mentioned in some of these, is like doing that energy protection of that bubble, or even asking for that protection around you is really helpful. Or Reiki energy healing is always good. So
there's all sorts. There's all sorts.
there's so many
What
things.
works for each person? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, because I think this is what I want to get out, that there's a lot of strengths of sensitivity, but it also comes with its challenges, right? So what would you say, like being on this path, like being in business and knowing you're, sensitive and finding this out about yourself, like what have been the challenges for you in your business with being sensitive?
Well, I think the main challenge is the health, actually. Yes. I mean, around 2016, yeah, I think it was 2016, the charitable organization I was working with, with the vulnerable people, kind of came to a natural end, which made sense because it didn't involve helping people get in touch with their higher selves. So, and then you mentioned that I had this progressive moon that meant that there was going to be a change around that time as well. So that all fitted in. And I decided, well, what I'm going to do is focus on my health first. So rather than building aiming to build what do they say these days, 5K, 10K business or whatever, I was like, no, the most important thing is I can't really grow my business until my health is good. And I know that I can manage, if I commit to something, I'll be well that day, that sort of thing. And at the time I still am, but at the time I was a huge fan of people like Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer. And I imagined myself being up on a podium somewhere doing the sort of channeled speaking that they did, which was never going to happen if I couldn't go near a crowd of people.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the biggest challenge is really kind of looking at how I can improve my health to make sure that I've got, well, when I say health, not just physical, but emotional and spiritual and energetic health, because it's our energetic health really that affects everything else. So, and then also, of course, being an introvert, it's finding ways to become visible that are comfortable for us as introverts. And I imagine that the majority of sensitive people are also introverts. So you'll know better than me. So yeah, that is the other challenge. I love working with people one-to-one. I have been a trainer and I do love training. I do feel I can also really get the best out of someone with my coaching if I'm working with them one-to-one and I can really tune into them. And there are people who are much more intuitive than me, but I seem to have some guidance, and I call it my magic mermaid, that whispers things in my ear or whatever, that I seem to be able to get the right results for people. But you can't really bring out the real authentic person in a crowd of other people, because they're not going to share as much as they would if they're on their own and feeling safe and so on. So yeah, I guess those are the two challenges, especially in the last couple of years when it's not really been safe to. I used to have people round sitting on my sofa, and now it's really got to be more online for everybody's safety.
Yeah, I love that you say about the health, coming back to your health, because I think that is such an important thing, isn't it? Like if you're not energetically, emotionally well, then it's going to be impossible to grow a business. And I think that many of us, I can say myself, have struggled with that, like you say, almost not knowing if you're going to be okay the next day for a client. And I've had multiple times where I've had situations where I've had to reschedule clients, and there's then that feeling of guilt that, oh God, you can't even energetically show up sometimes. But like you say, it's that putting your energetic health first is so important. And it's such an important piece of being highly sensitive, because we need more downtime, especially if we're introverts. But I know that you really value, and you talk a lot about the self-care piece, which is beautiful, because you're practicing what you preach, is that self-care always comes first. It's got to be a priority for us. And I think that sometimes we can be like, like the tortoise and the hare, we can feel like the tortoise, that it's okay. We just do things in a slower way. And we will get there. It just might take longer.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, I think it's been really important to me to work more and more on my intuition, because if rather than following some sort of protocol out there online, do this, do that, do the other, if I can really tap into my intuition, then I'll know who I'm best going to be working with, how I can best go about doing that.
Absolutely.
And I'll often just pop into my journal, because I personally believe that there are certain souls that are destined to work with me and me with them, and so I will sometimes pop into my journal, thank you universe for sending me the next soul aligned client, because those are the ones I want to work with, the ones who are always meant to have worked with me. And it's like, it almost, of course it does, but it almost doesn't matter what we do, the fact that we've connected will make a huge difference to their lives.
Absolutely. And I love that, again, that reminder that you're following your intuition as your like guide, your compass. It's not that, because I think we can get very stuck in comparing ourselves with what everyone else is doing. And I have done that, and I still do. I catch myself, right? But that is like your internal guide. And it's beautiful how you say that, like you say, you can really go deeper with your one-to-one clients, and almost you sense things, you hear things, you get that kind of what do you say, almost like those whisperings, the voices that help guide them. So would you say that is one of your superpowers of your sensitivity?
I would say, well, I mean, people feed back to me all sorts of things, but I would say for me, one of the things I am aware of in terms of my intuition is, in neuro-linguistic program, we are taught, don't get caught up in the content. So the he said, she said isn't important. Yes, people can express it, but what we're listening for is the structure of what's going on behind, because what they're experiencing now is just another manifestation of some mini trauma or large trauma that they had as a child. So what I'm sitting there listening to them, but I'm also waiting for some sort of nudge, like it's either some words flash up that they've said in front of me, or some words will sound louder, or I'll just get some sort of feeling in my body that will be like, that's what we need to work on today. And then I'll sort of stop them and go, yeah, okay, right, we're on, this is it, kind of thing. But I love, the first time we speak, I love people to just go blah, because then I've got a whole map of what's going on for them, everything, and then I will help them with like one issue. We'll work on what seems to be the most strongly affecting them, because it's that thing on the surface that's ready to go now. And then when that thing's gone that's on the surface, then other things will rise up afterwards. And as each thing goes, it's like, I suppose, slicing a cake. There's the icing, there's a bit that they came for that really was like the straw on the camel's back, and then we start digging a bit deeper and a bit deeper.
I love that. And you're great with metaphors. I mean, when I had, because I had a beautiful session with you as well, and you just straight away have that gift of tapping into the feeling. I came in like feeling blocked for creativity, and I can't remember. No, I do remember. I think it was all linked to self-worth again. Like, it's always, it's not what you think it is.
Yes, absolutely.
Root cause is not it. So it sounds like that is one of those, the gifts is that, like, Claire, what do you call it, Claire sentient, where you were feeling that those emotions, what needed to be worked on. And that is such a strength. Like, if we're doing this beautiful one-to-one work at Sensitive Women in Business, we can really draw on these literally superpowers to help our clients move forwards, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what we need to do. So what else would you say has helped you like navigate your, like really own that sensitive part of you?
I think so. I had one. Well, I've had a couple of clients actually where quite often I get clients who I've never worked on that situation before, like blood pressure or heart issues or something, where I've thought, I don't know anything about this, and I've actually tried to refer them to half a dozen other people before they go, no, I want my husband to work with you, sort of thing. And yeah, I did have one that was actually a client that I had no idea how I was going to help. And what I did actually was I thought, okay, well, I don't know, but they want to come to me. So that means that our higher selves want us to work together. So what I did was I've got this, I'm a real sort of, I love little cartoony kiddie things. I love all the fun bits. So I put I had this toy mermaid, not this particular one, it was one I was going to give my sister. And I put it on the sofa. And I thought, well, if I don't know what to do, she will. And I just went through the process. But what I found was that it was almost like I wasn't thinking. So this particular client was quite good at, happy to do drawings and things. So I got her doing drawings, and at 1 minute, I suddenly found myself seeing a rose quartz on my dressing table. So I ran upstairs and got the rose quartz. It must have been a bit odd. I kept leaping up, doing this. Or I'd get some special glittery pens or something. It was like, or cards I hadn't intended to use and stuff. So I know that, like, if I allow my guides to support me, that they will, and that I can do things sort of on a spontaneous level. So yeah,
I love that.
those are the things. Yeah.
So
And with,
like
again,
go on,
sorry, just with the NLP, when I'm using the parts integration, I just feel like that is so, which for those who don't know, is like tapping into two psychological parts of us that are maybe battling with each other or tugging us apart. I feel that is such an intuitive exercise. And sometimes, well, I mostly will see what other people are seeing. They describe it to me, but I can imagine it. But I'll also see maybe potentially what needs to happen next. But I won't tell them, I'll ask them. But it's like getting some little nudges will help me to ask them perhaps the right kind of questions so they can decide what needs to happen next in this exercise. Which means that they're in touch with their guidance and their intuition, which I love
that, because you're doing it from a space of like giving them, making them feel empowered, right, by finding their own truth. Like, not you're telling them, you're like, you're feeling into it and then asking them, well, what did you see and experience? Which again, I think is such a gift. I mean, I often do that in my astrology readings. If I get too much in the head, I used to a lot, if I just go with the session, I'll see a symbol speaking to me and I'll just go there and be like, what about this? And then some light bulb goes off in them and they're like, oh yeah, and you go down the rabbit hole that you didn't maybe see. So like you said, I love that you're following that impulse that you didn't know how you're going to help her, but you trusted, you saw what you needed to support her in that space. And it's trusting that, isn't it? It can take time to trust our intuition, trust that, because sometimes it seems like the most random thing, like to, grab those pens or whatever it was. Even situations my intuition has told me, to do something. I'm like, how does that relate to what I'm asking about?
Yes. I mean, I've had all sorts of odd things like that. It's like a time I was going to meet some people and I got in the car. It was a warm spring day and I suddenly thought, oh, I've forgotten my gloves. And I thought, well, I don't need gloves. It's not cold here in the car. So I went to where I was going. And then when I got there, I remembered that I had intended to bring a particular book. And when I came home, the book was under the glove. So I think sometimes our intuition maybe nudges us. Even like as I was saying with the coaching, I might have a little vision. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right vision, but it's just something that my mind can swallow, as it were, or understand.
Yeah.
Whereas perhaps if my intuition had said, don't forget the book, maybe it couldn't find a way of getting that across to me. So it said gloves.
Yeah.
But then I didn't listen to that. I was like, no, I don't need gloves. Whereas had I gone to get the glove, I would have seen the book and remembered.
I absolutely love that. I think because our intuition gives it in us in ways that we don't understand. Because if it told you the whole situation, you think, well, I don't really need the book, or you'd be thinking, I don't want to go all the way back for that. But it gives you in little nudges that you kind of, oh, okay, like that sounds fun, so I'll do that, and then amazing things happen. I mean, I've got so many stories of that. That would be like a whole fun blog to document all these synchronicities that happen. But so yeah, we've spoken about so many things. So lastly, just to kind of come on to, because I know self-care is important and we've talked about that, putting your health first, energetically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. What self-care practices do you have to help you, maintain your health?
So one is I do like to get out, walk in nature, and I'm very lucky that not this beach, but I do live by the beach. And I understand that there is a difference in the air when you're by the shore. Being a Piscean, I love being by the water as well. And I will listen to meditations. In term time, I run my own meditation group to help others as well. And I'm thinking about calling it a circle rather than a group, because the whole idea of a circle, or the whole idea of what I do, is not just to have a meditation, but also to coach, bring a little coaching in for people as well. And by using meditation with, for instance, the moon, we can sort of maybe meditate as you do, provide meditations on, what would you like to happen, or in the new moon, or what would you like to let go of in the full moon, and all those sorts of things. I aim, at least in the daytime, to eat only sort of fruit and vegetables. It's more, I'm more sociable with dinner with my husband, but I'll have salad for lunch, and all clean food. And music, I've begun to get more into doing more music, listening to more music, especially sort of disco music. I find raises my vibration.
Beautiful.
Because you can dance and move and things like that.
Yeah, I think this is a good one.
And drawing, so those are my main things. And one of the other things I'm doing at the moment to help with my self-care is I'm moving business-wise, I suppose. I'm not really thinking of it as business, more into play and more into images. So for me, because I'm a great fan of working with inner child and tapping into the inner child, and I love films that are cartoons, rather than, I'd much rather watch a Disney Pixar film than some people being blown up or something like that. So I love all of those with their lovely, beautiful stories. And so the images I'm creating at the moment are much more cartoon-like. And I've just created a group that you and I and another lady are going to be collaborating on, where we can all come to a safe island where we can, kind of celebrate, feel safe, rest, and learn more about ourselves. And I feel like that is self-care for me as well, because it's like what my inner child wants to do. And rather than being adulting kind of. making it more fun and playful. So I don't have an end destination for it at the moment yet. I'm using my natural process to just go step by step as any child would play, and find out what spontaneously comes following my intuition, I guess.
Beautiful. So many great tools, like self-care tools there. And I think I just want to say, add to that the bit of play, because as you know, I talk about play dates a lot. And I think playing, giving, doing things that bring our inner child joy is actually really essential to our well-being as well. Like, I know that if I haven't done something for fun for myself, like in the week, and I got too serious, then everything starts to feel stagnant. I see it in my business. I feel it in myself. I had a rut like the other week, and I knew I just need to break that and do something free and get out of my environment, go into nature. So I love that you're bringing that in to the work you do as well. And I'm excited to be part of it. We'll see what evolves.
Thank you.
So I could literally, I know we could talk all day, but to finish, what would you, if somebody's just found out that they're like highly sensitive and they're feeling, a bit overwhelmed, because I know it is. I remember I was like, what on earth do I do with all this information? Or, what would you say to them to just give them a little bit of hope on this journey if they feel a bit lost?
I think if someone's discovered, or I guess it's like that aha moment, isn't it? Like a paradigm shift. Oh, I'm a highly sensitive person, and I didn't realize. Just seek out other highly sensitive people, because they're along the journey. They will help, they'll support, they'll guide. They've probably been there. And really, I feel that highly sensitive people are super positive, super helpful, super supportive. Find groups, find books, find videos, find articles on not just highly sensitive people, introverts as well, because I think it's just another name. And just learn more about it, but also just take it tiny step by step, because if you want to learn more about it, then the right situations, the right people, the right information will appear for you. Just be open to it. There's no rush, and just enjoy the journey.
Beautiful. I love that. That's great advice. It's so true, because we become like a magnet to each other. The right people appear, and it's so important to have people that get you on this journey, because then you can be yourselves.
Absolutely.
It's much easier.
I guess also don't expect the people around you to suddenly take that on board. They've been going on their own route for a long time. Chances are we are among people who are very different to us, especially partnerships, because we tend to attract people who are like almost opposite us. Don't expect to change the world around you. Change from the inside, and the world will change outside afterwards.
That's a good point. I've actually got a book on the highly sensitive person in love that I was reading before, and it talks about, and this has a whole nother topic, but it talks about non-HSPs with HSPs and just the dynamics. It's, if anyone hasn't read that, it's worth a read as well. But thank you so much for your time and your energy, Vicki, and it's always a joy to talk to you. And thank you for being your authentic self and sharing all your beautiful wisdom. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Lovely to speak to you.
Thanks, Vicki.